Okay, part number 4 for fire officer, for building instruction for the fire officer, right? Today we're going to be discussing non-combustible construction or type 2A or 2B construction. So type 2 construction, which is also referred to as non-combustible. And again, this is a building instruction class for the anyone that needs the building construction for the New Jersey State fire officer. This is one of the components for the fire officer certification. Um, and we're doing an online class, instructor led, and there's going to be requirements of some testing as you matriculate through the program. So moving on with the type 2A or 2B non-combustible construction. All right, again, we need to undress the building. You know, what what are the bones of the building? How is this building put together? So with a type 2 building, and the one I have pictured here is a um, storage complex, and I think everybody has these type of buildings for storage, and they're uh, non-combustible type 2B buildings. All right. So what's a type 2B building? All right. The structural components, so the bones of the building, are non-combustible, meaning they won't burn. Right. So in this case, it's more than likely built with a steel bar joist truss. It's covered with a steel roof deck. There may be insulation over top of the roof deck, some type of waterproofing membrane or tar paper over top of the roof deck. But the 2B refers to the fire resistance of the structural elements. So 2B, when I say 2B, B as in Bravo, the construction, the bones of the building have zero fire resistance. So if they're attacked by fire, if they have direct flame contact, um, more than likely they're going to collapse relatively quickly. So here is a table from the International Building Code that basically breaks down the different groups. So I have highlighted here type 2. And again, it's A or B. So the A group is showing us that some of the bones of the building, some of the structural members are required to have some type of fire resistance rating. The highest rating in a type 2 building is 1 hour. So these elements could be uh, wrapped in some type of gypsum. They could have spray on fireproofing. They could even be encased inside of a fire resistive ceiling assembly, right? Uh, but the most common is going to be your 2B, unprotected. So none of the structural steel elements have any type of fire resistance protecting them from direct flame contact. So here is just a picture of a 2A non-combustible um, ceiling and roof assembly. You can see the steel bar joists. They're covered with a spray-on fireproof in this picture. Right? This is going to give it a 1 hour fire resistance rating. And the spray-on fireproofing is just one material that can be used. But again, some texts call these buildings uh, fireproof, right? Um, but again, nothing is really fireproof, right? There is a resistance to fire, but eventually, if the fire burns long enough, burns hot enough, there's enough fuel, the fire is going to win out, and you're looking at possible collapse of the building. All right, so the picture above was the aftermath of a recent fire that I responded to. This is one unit that was in a row of buildings in an industrial park. Again, Just like the storage facilities, I think everybody has industrial parks in their response areas. Um, Large buildings broken up into tenant spaces. So this is a great example of a type 2B building. And the structural steel was deformed from the heat. And steel elongates at about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's kind of important. So we get fire burning inside the building. Uh, it's exposing the steel is exposed to direct flame contact. The steel is heated up. We know that ceiling temperatures, are going to go up well above 1,000 degrees in most fires. So the steel is going to start to elongate. So as the steel elongates, it's in this case the steel bar joist trusses. They're set in masonry block, right, in each unit, and they'll expand. So they can actually push the block out. They can crack the block. They can damage the block. In this case, in this fire, the parapet over the front entrance collapsed. After fire was pretty much under control, the parapet collapsed. The steel lintel expanded enough that the parapet wall just fell. I believe I have a picture of it. So again, steel elongates at 1,000 degrees, right? So restrained steel beams heated above 1,000 degrees can cause collapse of the burning walls to which they are attached. And this could cause a localized collapse. So up here, this is where the lintel was for the parapet, and it collapsed down. Again, we maintained the collapse zone. Nobody was injured. Fire was controlled with basically a 2.5-inch hand line, flowing about 325 gallons a minute. There was also some roof deck fire, which was extinguished by a tower ladder. And the elongating steel bar joists expand and cause cracking to the bearing walls. The concrete block was also dislodged by the expanding steel. The good thing is these are 1-hour walls, and we also have the sealant up here where the roof deck meets the wall. So we had a proper fire sealant in here that did not allow fire to extend into the adjacent exposures. Now there's some myths out there with water and using water on steel, right? And this comes right out of Brannigan's textbooks, right? So water should not be thrown on hot steel. Well, that's a myth, right? So the truth is, water applied to hot steel will not cause collapse. Rather, it will draw the steel back towards its original shape, or it will freeze it in place without further expansion. So don't be afraid to put water on hot steel. If anything, you're going to improve conditions rather than make them worse. So roof decks, right? Roof deck fires, work on the roof deck, right? Ventilation of roof decks. So ventilation of steel roof decking during the fire is not recommended. That's right out of John Norman's Fire Officer's Handbook of Tactics. Reason being, the steel bar joists are um, significantly spread apart. So if you start cutting a steel roof deck, there's a good chance that the roof deck is going to hinge, and you could possibly slide into the fire area. So the recommendation is not to ventilate a metal deck roof, rather than work on using the reach of hose streams to extinguish the fire. Right. So again, if you have to ventilate the roof, that should be done after fire is pretty much under control. The other big thing about the tactics part, again, because I've been doing this series, and I've been again offering some tactical tips, because building construction can't be studied in a vacuum. It has to be part of fire behavior. We also have to incorporate some tactics, operations into the building the type of construction, the fire behavior. So it all has an effect on the outcome of the fire and how you're going to set up your operation. So again, the hand line off the bucket only after fire control. And right from Chief Norman, avoid the temptation to use the aerial device as a temporary standpipe. It ties it up if it's needed for other critical purposes. So in this case, the fire is extinguished, fire's out underneath. They did bring a hand line up, and they're doing some extinguishment up on the roof using the hand line off the tower ladder bucket. But if you're not under control, that tower ladder is much more effective doing other jobs than tying it up as a standpipe. All right, get up on the roof. All right, expect early collapse when fire is impinging the steel bar joists. Again, roofman, what do you see? There's a HVAC unit up on the roof over the fire area starting to pitch down. This needs to be transmitted to your officer, and needs to be transmitted to the incident commander that you have heavy mechanicals up on the roof. They're over top of the fire area, and it looks like it's started to be compromised. So, get on, as the roofman, get on the radio, give this report. So whenever we have a fire of any significance in a non-combustible building, like we were showing, there's always a possibility to have a roof deck fire. So the roof deck, it's steel, normally a steel Q deck with some type of insulation over the top of it. It may have built up layers of tar paper, it may have a membrane construction, but again, it's all combustible. So some of the issues with the roof deck, right? If the roof is still intact and the roof deck is burning, the tower ladder stream directly downward onto the roof is almost useless, right? Again, the roof is designed to keep rain out, and the fire may be feet beyond the point at which the roof is opened up. Fire that can be seen in these upper layers of roofing material, and that's right from browning. So again, the fire can burn far ahead of where you think it is. So a couple of experiences I had with roof deck fires, we had to get up and just start tearing up all the insulation, tearing up all the roofing material until we got to a point where there was no more fire. It is very labor intensive. According to Brannigan also, fires involving steel roof decks where the built-up roofing material can burn independently from the original structure. Right? Once the roofing material on the steel deck starts to burn, it can spread fire throughout the building. The underside of the roof deck should be cooled from a safe location using large caliber streams. So you can, if you have 2.5 deck gun, and you can get it into the building, and you can start cooling the underside of the roof deck, it's going to cool down that burning material below its ignition temperature, and you have a better chance of halting the fire's advance. So a historic roof deck fire was McCormick Place in Chicago. It was Exposition Center, and you can see the size of it, right? It's a couple of, good city block in size. So the building was built in 1960, and it burned down in 1967. It was built with no sprinklers in the exhibition areas, right? And this was a big venue for different types of shows, home shows, all kind of shows. There were no firewalls or separations in the exhibition areas. The investigation showed that 4 out of 7 fire hydrants surrounding the property were turned off. So again, this inhibited the Chicago Fire Department from getting water right away if they hit a hydrant that was off. It was unprotected steel roof support, so it was a 2B building, and in the exhibition area, the wiring did not meet safety standards. So they do believe that this building was set up, it was getting ready for some type of show, maybe a home show. Um, the wiring in some of the booths more than likely were attributed to have been the cause of the fire. It was it did cause a change in building codes after this fire. And I'm going to bring out later, I'm going to talk about tilt-up wall construction, but I'm just going to show you right here. You can see these panels, these wall panels. This would be considered a tilt-up wall construction. So again, when you see that, when we get to this later on, just take a look at that. So here's Chief Dunn talk about typical roof decks in Type 2 construction.
Window. A Type 2 constructed building, formerly called non-combustible construction, has a serious fire spread problem in the roof. This type of construction has non-combustible exterior walls, floors, and a structural framework of columns and girders. But the roof covering of the building burns and spreads fire. Typically, Type 2 buildings have roofs that are constructed with combustible layers of asphalt and felt paper laid over a steel roof deck.
So here's a typical example of a steel roof deck. We have the steel Q decking, right? We have some type of insulating material. We can have either felt paper, we can have a membrane, we can have some type of sheet material over top of that, asphalt sheet material as a weather protection. So this would be a standard built-up roof. Again, the issue is the fire can get down between the Q deck and the insulation and or the built-up material, and the fire burns along right here. You can't put it out by putting water on the roof. You either have to cut the roof deck up, all this material has to be cut up, or you can apply hose streams underneath to try to cool the combustion process. So that's just one tactic that can be used for a steel roof deck fire. So this is a fire that I responded to, and I did write an article for Fire Engineering about it, about the the foam insulating panels. We had a roof deck fire. It was a church assembly area. It was a gymnasium or a large arena for a church, right? The problem was they came in after all this roofing material was put on, and this is asphalt shingles over top of 4x8 sandwich panels of OSB board and rigid insulation. So this was already put down in place. There was a change for some structural reasons. So the engineer said they could beef up the roof deck and the bar joist by welding in half-inch steel fillets in the top chord of the truss. So they started welding these in, not taking into account that the conductive properties of heat was transferred right to this roof deck, which is right above. And this was a sample that we took from the site, and we actually did a field burn test on the foam. And when we put a light to the foam, it just burned fairly aggressively. All right, so this is another tactic with using a tower ladder bucket. All right, if we can get the tower ladder bucket right down to the ground, and you can use it to strike the underside of the roof deck. You can also use it to extinguish any fire that may be inside the building.
Reach out to MD&J workers, stay mindful, and biomass with negative results. Appreciate it.
All right, so that was a good use of the tower ladder to use that master stream to cool the roof deck and darken down as much fire as they could from a safe location using a heavy caliber stream that had a lot of maneuverability. So we all have these in our response areas. Strip malls, right? Again, you need to know the construction type of your strip mall, whether it's a ordinary constructed, it may have a wood roof deck, a wood roof system. In this case, this would be a type 2 non-combustible strip mall. And what I want to point out is the area in front of the building here is kept clear for your tower ladder operation. Again, you may bring in a ground-mounted deck gun or blitz fire if that's the only thing you have. But if you have a tower ladder and you can get it positioned down in front, all right, this is a great position for this piece. It has plenty of maneuverability to work all these stores if they have to. One issue you want to watch out for is in this case, we have an exposed waterway, right? So they're going to the roof. I really don't know why they went to the roof with this. There was obviously some reason to go up to the roof. But again, got to be cognizant of that exposed waterway hitting the parapet and damaging the waterway. All right, this is a new ShopRite building called Tilt Up Construction. Picture to the right, the tack welding 6x6 steel flat stock to hold the wall panels in place. And here's the way the piece of it comes in on a truck, gets lifted up by a train. All right, you can see up here these are they're steel flat stock. They just tack weld it together, and the thing that holds this whole thing together are the trusses. Once the trusses are set in place. So here's a picture of tilt up construction. And again, once they get this up, trusses go in here and they tie the whole thing together. I'd like to talk about big box stores. Right? So we all have the Home Depot, we all have the Lowe's in our response areas. And if anyone has taken the course from Dave Dotson, Reading Smoke, he talks about volume, velocity, density, color. So when we talk about big box stores, we talk about volume, right? So what's the size of the box? So if you have a real small box, a small house or something like that, and there's a report of a fire, you expect to see smoke coming out, right? If we respond to the Home Depot and we have smoke coming out of the front door, we have a big problem. All right, so because you think of the huge box, the huge volume of that store, and how much fire has to be in there, what has to be burning, the amount of smoke being produced in relation to to the entrance. Um, if we have fire smoke coming out that front door, there's a lot of smoke in that building. There's a lot going on, right? So a lot of issues with these big box stores, high rack storage, unprotected steel above 20 feet from the floor. They do have large, extra large open sprinkler heads. So you have the sprinkler head opening um, is almost a 3/4 inch tip. So you're going to have a lot of water when a sprinkler system goes off. There's going to be a lot of water coming out, and you're most likely going to have more than one head going off. And they usually have a fire pump. So you're going to have massive amounts of water being discharged into this building over top of the fire area. Now, that's not to say it's going to put the fire out. Right? It may hold the fire in check, it may put most of the fire out. You're still going to have to go in with a hose line, do overhaul, and extinguish any pockets of fire that are still visible. So some of the issues with these big box stores, ventilation openings. A lot of them, if you can get to the roof and you know where the area of fire is, there are ventilation openings, hatches. Some of the hatches may be spring loaded, that if the fusible link melts, the hatch will spring open, provide ventilation. But more often than not, there is some type of skylight that you can take out, so you wouldn't have to cut the roof for ventilation. There are openings. One of the issues is going to be cold smoke. Right? Sprinkler system goes off, you're going to have a lot of smoke low to the floor. You may require some type of rope system to as a guide, so firefighters can find their way to the area of fire and they can find their way back to the entrance. There have been incidents in mall buildings where companies have gone in to fight a fire inside of a mall building. Um, Once they got in, smoke conditions got so bad, there was some difficulty in finding their way back out to the exterior before running out of air. So just other issues to take into account, right? And then, not to mention, there's going to be major overhaul involved and collapse of storage racks. So you really need to be cognizant of that. Right? Once you start overhauling, um, you really don't know how these storage racks are mounted. Um, just be careful that you don't pull a storage rack over on top of yourself. So what kind of business use is this? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. What's the construction? You may have this in your town, all right? 3-story office building. Right? So what's your size of it? Is it a 2A or a 2B building, right? Are the structural steel members protected or are they unprotected? Some other information that could be very important, right? We have a fire department connection. And in this case, it's telling me basement atrium, partial 3rd floor, and there's a standpipe. So it's not a fully sprinkled building. So if you're the pump operator, you're the chauffeur, and you pull up to the fire department connection and you see the sign, you need to transmit that to your company officer, transmit that to the incident commander, give him that information that he's not dealing with a fully sprinkled building. And where are the sprinklers in the building, all right? So in this case, it's a basement. So this building has a basement, all right? So here it is. We're looking at a steel bar joist, all right? This would be the 1st floor up here. We're standing in the basement. Lots of storage. Saving grace, it is sprinkled. It's a windowless storage area. We have sprinklers in there. So key points to take from this presentation: structural members are non-combustible, but they can collapse when exposed to flame impingement. Non-combustible construction can have some minimal fire resistance applied to the structural members along with roof and floor assemblies. Expect early collapse, at least partial collapse, if flame is impinging on unprotected steel. One other point that I didn't put in here is we use the term non-combustible building, right? Non-combustible, that means the bones of the building, the structural members, the columns, the floor assemblies, the joists, they're not going to burn. But the building is full of combustible material, and that is going to burn, right? So these are dangerous buildings for firefighters to be working in, and incident commanders need to understand the issues that they're going to have with a non-combustible building. So thank you for your attention, and here's my information if you need to get a hold of me, and we'll see you for the next part, which should be fire resistant construction.